Good evening. A bit of a disclaimer, maybe one of the longer disclaimers that we have on the Venture Forward, but we're going to talk about a little bit of everything tonight, even though tonight or today is a milestone moment for me. And we're definitely going to talk about that, but we might as well talk about everything else as well. First, let's start off with the key topic. Basically, this episode's going to talk about the dangerous path of gambling addiction and mental health for that matter. And a reminder also about multiple sclerosis. All of these things may be sensitive to some of our viewers. As we always say, viewer discretion is advised. We remind you to please consult your doctor, your mental health professional, your outreach group, your sponsor, or specialist before adopting any change to your dietary, physical, and or mental health regime. Now, if you're looking for a place to turn to with respect to gambling addiction, contact the National Compulsive Gambling Hotline at either 1-800-522-4700 or 1-800-GAMBLER, which is 1-800-426-2537. They can also be reached at ncpgambling.org. Basically, it's a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week, 365-day-a-year service for those people that are fighting compulsive gambling. And as they will always say, and as I will remind you, bet with your head, not over it. In my case, bet never again, but bet with your head, not over it. The next disclaimer, is about mental health. And one that we've talked about many times before. And if problem gaming or problem gambling is part of that, you could definitely contact these hotlines as well. If you're looking for options to go with respect to mental health, contact SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, at 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357. That service is also a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week, confidential, free information service for individuals and family members facing such stressors. Importantly, if you're facing suicidal crisis or emotional distress and need to be in touch with a crisis center, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. Or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. You can also text the word HOME to 741-741. That service is also a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week service, and fully confidential for those that contact it. Lastly, and most importantly, at least what has transpired in my life the last 3-4 months, definitely first in my mind and my heart, is the National MS Society. National MS Society is a collective of passionate individuals who want to do something about MS now, to move together towards a world free of multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is comprised of unpredictable and often disabling flare-ups of the central nervous system. Such flare-ups disrupt the flow of information within the brain and within the brain in the body. The National MS Society is the largest private funder of MS researchers in the world, investing more than $1 billion to date. MS stops people from moving, but the National MS Society exists to make sure that MS doesn't. To contact the National MS Society, please call 1-800-344-4867. Again, 1-800-344-4867, or go to their website at nationalmssociety.org. And on that, let's begin. Of the chips that are in my wallet, this chip seems to resonate with me. It's a chip I got today from being away from compulsive gambling for a year. It's a very special edition of the Venture Forward, where we talk about exactly what I gained from not doing such a vicious habit and not compulsive gambling anymore. This is the Venture Forward. Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be, and welcome to the Venture Forward, a special edition of the Venture Forward. My name is John Venturini, and I'm a recovering addict of not only overeating, obesity, not only alcoholism, but compulsive gambling as well. And today, I am 1 year away, 1 year removed from such a very nasty and addicting habit. One that basically caused so much, not only financial difficulty in my life, but one that caused so much by way of familial relationship sort of problems. It created a lot of harm. And we're going to talk about all of that tonight. I want to say hello to all of you that are on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And I want to start off with Marilyn. Marilyn says, good afternoon, John. Congratulations on your 1 year. Thank you, Marilyn. I appreciate that. LT, how are you? He says, hi, John. Hi, Marilyn. He also says, congratulations. Thank you, LT. Appreciate that. Sue says, congratulations on your 1 year. Proud of you, and thank you for sharing. Anytime, Sue. It's a question that's been asked a lot of why I do this program, why I've done this sort of level of project. This is one of the reasons, because all you have to do is watch television during a local ad break and see half of the commercials related to gambling, where we still live in a world where we don't have as much connection to the outside world, so to speak. There is that compelling argument to go ahead, throw away your hard-earned money on a game where you don't have much of a chance. And the chance is definitely in the odds of the operator. So this is why we do this program. This is why I talk about the alcoholism. This is why I talk about the overeating. This is why I talk about co-addiction. This is why I talk about everything. Because at the end of the day, they're all connected, aren't they? So, thank you. Thank you for that, Sue. Sarah, thank you very much. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for that. I appreciate that a lot. So, yeah, it was this day back last year. And the question always comes up, what was my bottom? We always talk about how one makes that turning point away from an addiction. And we talk about that event of the bottom. My bottom is a thing that gets reminded to me every April, and that of tax time. And the fact that even in the first 3 months of last year, before I said, that's it, there's no way I can continue doing this. It's ruining me financially. It's ruining every part of me. There were still plenty of things that had 1099 forms. Things that still had W-2Gs attached to them. At one point, I had to say enough is enough. Was it the fact that I was going through relationship problems? Sure. Was it the fact that I never had a good amount of money in my wallet because it was going away somewhere? Sure. Was it because the IRS and Uncle Sam caught wind of a lot of this and said, in the middle of all this, now is the time for an audit. We know you're going through a divorce. We know you're going through everything else. Now is the time. Now is the time, if any, for an audit. Boy, am I thankful for that audit. You would never think those words would ever equate in the English language. Let's dissect for a second. Boy, I am thankful for the audit. 99 times out of 100, no one ever says that. This is the one time out of 100. This is the one time out of 100 I realize, boy, I spent way too much time in the confines of a casino. Boy, I've spent way too much time online gambling. boy, I spent too much time just thinking about it. So yeah, the audit was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. It's the sort of thing where it's something that has, as I mentioned on the episode back in March, it's the thing that stuck with me for a long time. Ever since I was of age to go gamble. And sure, before that too. But when nothing was satiating the need to go out and gamble, when nothing was satiating the need to go ahead and figure that out, when there were weekends and days where I couldn't think nothing more than to gamble. Now, there's a lot of underlying effects to that, but I'm never going to talk about that, whereas I own that problem. I own that thing. So, yeah, very thankful for that. Sarah says life-saving. Yeah, it saved my life. Outside of watching the compulsive eating, outside of realizing that I'm an alcoholic, that by far saved my life. And like I said in the pre-roll, I would truly think that this might be the most valuable token, the most valuable chip I have in my chips. And I carried a chip for the overeating. I carried a chip for the alcoholism. But this chip, that's the one that talks about everything else, doesn't it? That's the one that, from a mental health perspective, is a personification of everything else that's happened. As far as losing the weight, I lost the weight 3 times. And I certainly won't talk about a 4th because I'm not going to gain that weight ever again. I realize the other things that drove me to doing that. But that's neither here or there. The alcoholism, I would dare say that I was more of a social drinker that became more of a long-term drinker, a constant everyday drinker because of the environment I was in. But this chip, the gambling, has always been a part of my life. You talk to my buddies from college, and we would always joke around, hey, when are we going to Atlantic City? When are we going to, you name the place? Back when gambling wasn't that frequent. States didn't have as much gambling as they do now. So there was always these destinations people went to. But yet, as a college-age kid, I was thinking about it. As a high school-age kid, I was even thinking about it. There were plenty of poker games in my 10th, 11th, and 12th grade year. It's been a part of my life. Most of it. So, there's the problem, right? There's the compulsion. There's the addiction, and there's the fact that I am addicted to that sort of thing. But it took a call from Washington on that very cringeworthy IRS paper that makes me realize this is stopping now. This is stopping now. It's not stopping yesterday. It's not stopping tomorrow. It's stopping now. So, truly the bottom. Des, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Hope everything is good for you over in Australia. There have been times in the last 2 years, especially in the last year, because 1 year not gambling, where things were absolutely rough. Things were absolutely, would I say mind-numbing? Yeah, you could say that. And where I was really just feeling the effects of all this, where I needed that sort of thing. And yet I refrained because I knew what was attached to it. And I know that a life without it, I feel a lot better. A life without it, I'm not worried about that sort of thing anymore. Now, you throw in the other pieces of this in the fact that, I don't know, I claimed bankruptcy. I don't know. There are other things like my health that have taken the spotlight front and center. And I have multiple sclerosis, outside of the fact that on Wednesday, I go back to UPenn for another infusion. There are many things that have been thrown in this direction where it'd be very easy for me to say, that's it. Haven't. Because as I've always said on this show, and it's what's on my whiteboard, there is no alternative. There isn't. I know what would happen if I went down that road again. There'd be no turning back, and it would kill me. As much as everything else we've talked about on this show. There is no turning back, and it would kill me. I could say that without a doubt. I would dare venture to say it probably killed my father, amongst other things. Outside of the diabetes, outside of the multiple heart attacks. My dad, God rest his soul, gambled a lot. Frequent player down in Atlantic City. Loved it. It wasn't doing him any favors. I grow up. I spent 11 years of my life in Connecticut. I realized it's not doing me any favors either. But it took 8 more years outside of moving from Connecticut to realize it's definitely not doing me any favors. Outside of the fact that there was nothing, and it goes back to this, there was nothing that satiated that sort of drive. There was nothing that satiated that sort of demand. That sort of false hope that you're going to win countless amounts of money and it's going to change your life. Not when you're sick. Not when you're sick, because as I mentioned on the show before, I won money. I ended up giving it back really quickly. Not many people can say that they've went online to gamble for the lottery. And not many people can say that they went online to play a lottery game and won $50,000. And then I guess one further would be, not many would say that they won $50,000 and gave it back in 3 months. But that was me. That was me. At a time where I realized that I had to do other things, there was something that wasn't solved for yet. We talk about the term in internal family systems as the term of firefighting. There was a lot of firefighting going on with me. The firefighting starts up here. The firefighting starts because there has been a problem or a gap in other portions of our life. How we deal with things. How we confront things. Now, when we talk about firefighting, we can also talk about the topic that you may substitute one firefighter for a more benevolent firefighter. Sure. But it's still fighting a fire. And unless we address where the fire is coming from, we'll always be putting something out. There are many different reasons why we gravitate to these sort of things. There are many reasons why I gravitated to gambling. Was it something to do on a weekend? Sure. Was it something to do for countless hours in a place where there was no clocks? Yes. Was it something where you were looking forward to the next win? Next set of ding-dings and whoop-whoops? Yes. But once you have the ding-dings and the whoop-whoops, when you're sick and you don't think of anything past that, you're thinking, how quick can I go back to the activity? Because you're addicted. You're addicted to the compulsion of gambling. In a normal world, and can you ever say the term normal world when it comes to gambling? Probably not. In a normal world, if you came across a large sum of money, you'd say, you know what? Mission accomplished. I don't have to do this anymore. Or mission accomplished. I achieved everything I was trying to get out of this exercise. That never happens. It never happens. It doesn't matter if you're talking to the person that's playing penny slots, playing 60 cents a spin, or the person that's sitting in the high limit room playing $30 a spin, $100 a spin. It's the same thing. And here's a little bit of a spoiler. They're usually playing with more money, or they're usually gambling more money than they can afford. And they may not realize it at that moment, but when it starts accumulating, they realize, wow, I can afford to put more money per spin, or more money per wager, or more money on the table. That's when the problem gravitates. That's when the problem gravitates. Dr. Gilly is eating kiwis. Hello, how you doing? Hope you're well. So, at the end of the day, we talk about the chips that are in my wallet. The chips that are in a little satchel that's in my left pocket. And we talk about the overeating. And we talk about the alcoholism. But this is the most valuable chip that's in there. The chip that I had the chance to take today for 1 year. We can go through the story, and we will, about how deep this problem was. This is stuff we've talked about before, but I think it bears repeating on this very episode, on this very important moment in my journey. So we're going to do just that. Hopefully it works. It does. Perfect. 1 year not gambling. That's the board. The board has 3 metrics up there. The number of days I track food, which we're at 786 days of tracking food over 2 years. The number of days I have not had a drink and I've been sober at 684 days. We'll get to 2 years on May 30th. And the 1 year now of not gambling. April 12th. Those numbers, those are the days that I track. Those are the days that I follow each and every day. The days I change on that whiteboard. I think LT put it wisely in his comment where he said that chip saved a lot of money. It sure did. It sure did. I mean, it has basically opened the door for me to look at other components of this. Talk about the fact that there is so much unsecured debt, so much debt in general that I really have to do something about it. So yeah, that chip has saved a lot of money. And the exercise of what's coming to me on the 21st, not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday, is just as important. That's when I have a hearing with the U.S. Bankruptcy Court to start working through this. I already made one payment, 59 payments to go. But if I'm going to have that slate wiped clear of all that, another important step of that process takes place on the 21st. But a lot of the reason why I was in that hole is because I'm a compulsive gambler. Outside of the fact that I am an alcoholic and I'm a compulsive eater and other addictions that I haven't put a label on yet. Compulsive shopper, not as much. It comes from time to time, doesn't it? But yes, those are the numbers that matter. We talk about compulsive gambling. We can go through the Mayo Clinic definition. The thing is, it's a situation where the reward system in your brain is addicted like drugs, like any sort of other chemical, by the dopamine rush of the game itself. It is basically tied to, as I affectionately call it, the ding-dings and the whoop-whoops. And there's that false promise that, if I keep doing it, I'm going to be rich. I'm going to have massive amounts of money. You're not going to do that. That's not going to happen. Now, is there professional treatment that could be gained for compulsive gambling? Yes. And that's what we were referring to before with those hotlines. And I'll bring those numbers back up. And that of 1-800-522-4700 or 1-800-GAMBLER, those are both ties to the National Compulsive Problem Gambling Hotline. 24/7, 365. If you can't control it, those are the numbers you can go. And there are many recovery groups. LT is one of those folks that runs a recovery group. There are many recovery groups that will absolutely open the door to try to beat this addiction for you, that will try to attack this thing head on and try to make that recognition that the only way I'm going to work through this is not to do something that's going to create such havoc, such danger in my life. LT had another comment, which the graphic basically cuts off. Hang on, I'll get rid of that. There we go. It's awesome how much that chip represents so deep, so many facets that go into a year when you are compared to where you could be. That's absolutely right, LT. That's absolutely right. I think the thing that gravitates to my story is the fact that this chip is most valuable because this has always been a problem. There have been periods where I've lost the weight before. We talk about the story about me losing the weight 3 times, 200 plus pounds each time. We talk about the alcoholism, which, again, there was a period of time where I didn't drink and I gravitated back to it. But if you want to talk about something that's been constant, that's been throughout my adulthood, my teenage years, it's this. I'll go one deeper. I think the environment that you get around you, I wouldn't say the term peer pressure because that could be a bit passé, but it's the sort of company you keep, their perceptions on things that could definitely wane your opinions on things, especially when, using another term, when your frame's not strong, right? When your frame's not strong, your opinion can be easily melded one direction or another. That's why we talk about the fact that it all starts up here. Like what I say about dieting. You have to address why you're in that sort of place in the first place. You have to address what's going on in your brain, what's going on with your feeling before you can take on anything else. Outside of a diet, outside of exercise, outside of this, outside of that. Gilly has a great question. Do you define gambling only with money, or does that also count reckless or dangerous behavior and decisions, example, motorcycles or skydiving? Gilly, spot on. For the sake of this episode, we're talking about traditional definitions of gambling, but yeah, it could absolutely talk to reckless behavior. In the coming weeks, we're going to start talking about those that we talk about. Alcoholics Anonymous, we talk about Gamblers Anonymous, talk about Narcotics Anonymous. We're going to talk about anonymous groups that talk about suicide. Fortunately, it's not something that has affected me per se, but I have friends who go to those meetings. And they're ready to start sharing their story. So that sort of behavior, that sort of recklessness for your own life, when you're looking for the thrill and not necessarily the actual ramifications therein, that absolutely is gambling, Gilly. I'll bring your comment back up because you made such a great point there. Motorcycles, skydiving, that sort of thing. Now, is it to say that you can't go skydiving? No, it's not to say that. Is it to say you can't own a motorcycle? It's not to say that at all. But you can have an unhealthy relationship with the sort. You could do reckless things with those instruments that could put you at risk. So, yes, that in itself is gambling. So, there are signs and symptoms. This is, as the Mayo Clinic, basically puts it up. you know, I'll talk to three that gravitate to me. It's like the fact that you're always chasing if you're losing. So, oh, don't worry. On the next game, I'm going to get it back because I'm going to up my bet, and that's going to make everything the difference. You know, it can also jeopardize and lose important relationships because of it. There's a check mark for me next to that too. And then I guess the other thing is feeling restless or irritable when you try to cut down on gambling. Or after a very rough night, not spending the night sleeping because you're so consumed with what happened. Absolutely. So, yeah, there are plenty of signs and symptoms. There are quizzes you could take to realize how much of a degree of compulsive gambling you have. We've discussed those quizzes on the show before. They're out there. I can share them with you offline if you like. But, yeah, I had most of those signs and symptoms checked off. I probably had them checked off for a long time. It took something like an IRS audit. It took something like relationships that are hurt, relationships that are damaged, for me to realize, okay, now it's time to do something about it. But I'm really glad I did. Really glad I did. Because I don't think I'd be in any place right now to tackle anything else if I had that looming over my head too. It goes back to what we were talking about with the multiple sclerosis. It'd be very hard for me to tackle something like that at 480 pounds, or as an alcoholic, or as a compulsive gambler, or I don't know, all three of them. I made very important movements in my life to not be in that vicinity, to not be there, so I could tackle things that are also in my life that need to be taken care of. Thank you, Aunt Bern. I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. Those are the signs and symptoms. Signs and symptoms that I've had for a very long time. And someone just thank you, someone. I don't have a name there. Someone with a super chat of 10 coffees. Thank you very much. I enjoy my coffee. I enjoy being caffeinated. Thank you very much for the super chat. So what's next? There's the questionnaire. It's a form of that list before. Did you ever lose time from work or school due to gambling? And there's 20 questions, actually. Did gambling ever affect your reputation? Did you ever gamble to get money with which to pay debts or otherwise solve financial problems? After a win, did you have the urge to go back and gamble more? Here's a hint. When gambling doesn't satiate that urge or satiate that sort of need, you do. That's how a $50,000 win from the Pennsylvania lottery gets back into the Pennsylvania coffers within 3 months. Did you ever borrow to go fund your gambling? Those are the first 10 questions. Have you ever sold anything to finance gambling? Other questions like, did you ever gamble longer than you had planned? Oh, did I ever? Yeah. Did gambling ever cause difficulty in sleeping and personal destruction or suicide? Fortunately, that was never the case with me. I would say personal destruction probably more than suicide. Suicide never. But, yeah. The thing is, when you have 12 or 13 of those questions answered yes, some will say even 9 or 10, you have a problem. So you have to address these things. I also would venture one further and say, if you're around a community that does it, and have those sort of problems themselves, one, realize that. Two, stand your ground about it. Protect yourself. Make sure that mask is covering you first before everybody else gets a chance to breathe in that cabin without any air pressure in there. but then also be very real about it. Be very honest about it. So that's the questionnaire. Gamblers Anonymous, outside of Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, all the Anonymouses, all were shut down because of the events of 2020, but fortunately, the online communities have helped considerably. It's where I plug Recovering Addict and that of LT Weaver. Great place to go. He has shows multiple times a week, and he has Zoom meetings almost 24/7. A really stand-up guy, but more than that, Sober James, Real Recovery with Nicole. There are a lot of folks out there, a lot of people out there that have lived this battle, that have lived that sort of thing, and are willing to help other people out. Whether it's a question of 12 steps or any sort of methodology, addressing what it is, being accountable for what it is, but then working around it. So we talk about loyalty at what cost. And when we first started talking about gambling on the show, I showed you a countless barrage of loyalty cards I had for Atlantic City casinos and Pennsylvania casinos and casinos up in Connecticut and Delaware and Maryland and Las Vegas, obviously. It's something that reminds me that to an establishment like that, you're just a number. You are a long-term value statement as far as what you bring to the casino's coffers as a patron of entertainment, as well in their mind is the thing they do. That's how they make their shareholders happy. That's how the board has, lucrative jobs and everything. They're in the business. They're not running a charity. They're in the business of making money. Somewhat at the false guise that they're going to try to give you money or give you a chance to make money. But that's what they're in the business of. So, yeah, loyalty at what cost? 20 some odd years of gambling, legally. More times outside of that. It's been a part of my life until I decided that no more is probably for the best. And when the IRS sends you a statement, then no more is definitely for the best. But as I replay the tape, as I look back at what it has cost me, it took more than an IRS letter. It was something that definitely was the problem in my life. It is one of those quintessential addictions that talk about everything else. And you're going to find more times than not, there are many, many people in this world that have that same addiction. Now, the question is, are they strong enough to go out and try to get help for that addiction? Or do they not think they have a problem? Who knows? But it took a massive bottom of epic proportion to realize I have a problem. It takes a massive amount of humility and honesty to say, I have a problem. More than getting on a scale, more than throwing out all your liquor. It's the realization that I have a problem. So, yeah, that's my realization. That's my reality. And with everything else that's going on in my life right now, if I can get those three things, the big three, figured out, it allows me to tackle a lot more pressing things that don't need the noise of those three horrible things blocking it. They're not really, the reason why they exist is not because of any sort of simple fact. There's a lot of things underneath the nooks and crannies of things that make you realize there's a reason why he's eating. There's a reason why he's drinking. Oh, there's a reason why he's gambling. And it takes moments of honesty and deep meditation and thought to say, you know what? No more. one further past that. If I find myself, or if someone finds themselves in a place where those things are coming back, we must be strong enough to say, that is not for me. My frame is not that strong enough. And how do I strengthen that frame? That's the truth. And the thing is, do relapses happen? Yeah, they do. When the bottoms were not significant enough, or you haven't had a good success, or if you haven't had a good walk away from it, a good story around that, a good plan forward, a good health plan, a good prevention plan, more times than not, it does come back. But again, it goes back to the thought that there really is no alternative. Any sort of wane back will clearly kill me. If I remember that, and I keep on remembering why I'm doing what I'm doing, I have a chance. I have a shot at this. Moreover, it gives me an opportunity to help others that may need that nod forward, that may need that nod and help, may need that sort of that ear to listen to when they're not having a good time of things, when they're teeter-tottering over the edge. We're all in this together. To steal LT's line, we do recover better together. To steal a line we have in a live streaming community, I also say we live stream better together too. That's part of it. To being able to be open and honest and talking about this so I can help others. But moreover than that, I can reacclaim faith over and over and over again about why I do what I do, about why this makes all the sense in the world. Sue says, thank you. One day at a time for sure. One day at a time, one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. Without question. As far as the treatment's concerned, compulsive gambling is treatable. There are therapy and support groups that are out there to help, and there are medications in the sense that, antidepressants, mood stabilizers, narcotic antagonists. There are a lot of ways to treat this. It's all based on how deeply rooted the problem is. Quick question for those that are watching on Facebook. I had a comment here. What happened? Broadcast was paused. I think I'm up and running. Please let me know if that's not the case. There are ways to treat this. But it all starts back to basics and realizing that you have a problem and you want to get help. It goes back to that. And again, with questions of compulsive gambling, there is a National Compulsive Problem Gambling Hotline at 1-800-522-4700. Again, 1-800-522-4700 or 1-800-GAMBLER at 1-800-426-2537. They can also be reached online at ncpgambling.org. If you're willing to make that change, if you're realizing the harm that's causing you in life, the best thing you could ever do for yourself is to go down that road. The best thing you could ever do for yourself is to go down that road. Marilyn says, JV, you're such an inspiration for all. Thank you for all you do. We are so blessed to know you. I'm blessed to know all of you too. All of you in this community, all of you in the recovery groups, all of you in the live streaming groups, all of you have made such a help for me and made days like this really, really important at the point where I get choked up about it. When I took hold of this chip, I thought about the story. I thought about exactly what has transpired. I think about everything I've gone through. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. I'd be lying to you to say, oh, this is like a walk in the park. No, this is like child's play. No, it's not. Far from it. This is tough stuff. But when we do what we do, when we work towards a venture forward, we know that great things are out there for us. An incredible future has a potential for us. And it's not a guarantee, but at least we're setting up the stage for incredible things that could happen. Every moment, as we talked about on a show, was it earlier this season or last season? Every moment is indeed a gift. It takes a very strong personality to look at a moment, no matter what the moment is, and realize that that in itself is a gift. It could be the most direst of, is that even a word? Is that even a word? The most awful of moments. If your mind and your conviction is strong enough to dissect something good from it, you stand a chance to at least have sustainability. To not to have the doldrums or dwell upon things that can hurt you. I think that's what got me caught up today. I think that's deep down inside. When we talk about everything that's happened, everything that I've worked around, everything that I'm fighting through now, the fact that I could be strong enough to do the things that I've done is what's keeping the train on the proverbial track. And I'll say it again, this chip is the most valuable one that's in my wallet. When I get, and notice the verb there, when I get the chip for 2 years of sobriety, that will be an incredible chip to have as well. Just like the 1-year chip for sobriety, just like the 2-year chip for tracking food and overeating. The chips are important. The tokens of what I've gone through are important. And the fact is, being open, honest, and transparent about everything that's going on is the most important thing I can do. Especially when I could do this for a bunch of incredible people like you. And go back to Maine here. It's tough to remember exactly all those things, all those stories, all those life events that took place at a casino or in Atlantic City or in Las Vegas or some hole in the wall in West Virginia or Maryland or whatever. It's hard to remember all those. But when you look at the collective sum of everything that happened in those places, I always realize that there are moments that were important for me to learn. There was always some sort of spark that would happen. But the realization is that my life is away from those places now. It's not to say that I wouldn't go back to Vegas at some point. But I'd probably be going to go to Red Rock Canyon to do other things, play golf, do that sort of thing. Certainly not gambling anymore. This reminds me of that. Let's talk about what's coming this week. There is no Venture Forward tomorrow. So just cleared out right out of the way. There's no Venture Forward tomorrow night. It's because I'm getting prepared for my trip back to Penn Medicine on Wednesday for my second half infusion of Oservis. Which, truth be told, it took me about a week and change to fully recover from it. It's going to take me a while to do that too, but knowing that it is a medication that targets several of your B cells those that are tied to that sort of autoimmune deficiency and that of multiple sclerosis, I know that that sort of level of discomfort, the moments of itchiness, the moments of depression is important. And I will get through that as much as I got through everything else. So Wednesday, I might do a live stream from Penn Medicine. And if I do, it'll happen at the spur of the moment. I go for the infusion Wednesday morning at 8:30. So if I do that, it'll be sometime in the 8:30 to 12:30 time frame. Even if I don't get online to do a live stream, I will record a video and I'll put that out on the channel as well. Thursday is the next episode where we will just talk about the infusion that took place on Wednesday. We'll talk more about multiple sclerosis. We'll talk more about the things that are coming down the road for what I need to do to attack multiple sclerosis. And then Friday, there won't be a VF Talks either, but there will be other shows next week that we'll talk about in the coming days. I wanted to thank all of you for joining me tonight. Tonight was a very important episode to have on a very strange night. We don't usually do Mondays. We don't usually do 7 o'clock at night. But this was important. And I'm glad you are here to hear my story, but also realize why that chip, this chip, is the most important chip in my wallet. And I'll put up the number again for the National Council of Problem Gambling. It's at 1-800-522-4700, 1-800-522-4700, or 1-800-GAMBLER at 1-800-426-2537, or they could be reached at ncpgambling.org. And on that, I'm going to say the same thing I say at the end of every Venture Forward or VF Talks. Stay safe, stay sane, stay strong, stay sober. You're worth it. I might see you Wednesday from UPenn. If I don't, I'll definitely see you at Thursday at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific to talk about that second half infusion and that go forward from the O service and treating multiple sclerosis. Have a great night. Thank you once again.